Welcome to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Jacob, where I sit down to record these episodes and realize I left the air conditioner on far too long and it's fucking freezing in here. Today's topic comes from JPB5 and asks, frequent updates to games. Today's generations of games allow developers to release updates and patches at their own will. Is this a good thing because developers can fix bugs once they see them, or is this a bad thing because games can be released unfinished? It's a really good question. Both. That's the short answer, both. There are definitely good sides to this and bad sides to this. I would honestly say, unfortunately, there's probably more bad than good here. I think one of the examples of how this can be exceptionally bad, and it's one that people will remember for a very, very, very long time, is Cyberpunk 2077. It suffered heavily from one major issue. It was released too soon. I don't think it was the game developer's fault. I think that people whining and complaining about it was certainly a factor there. The higher-ups there at CD Projekt Red might have had something to do with it as well, of course, but the people actually making the game, yeah, I don't think it was their decision to push it out unfinished. But they did push it out unfinished, and unfortunately, that caused a lot of issues. Issue number one is, it wasn't finished, so the game didn't work correctly. There was a lot of bugs, a lot of glitches. I mean, hell, we streamed it right around launch, and it was a buggy mess. What worked was fun, but it was a buggy mess. Now, slowly over time, they have been releasing patches and fixes to make the game work correctly and be more in line with what they wanted it to be when it launched. But here's the problem. It's too late. The game already had its launch, and it will always be known as the game that wasn't ready. No matter if it ends up the most phenomenal, perfect game of all time after it finally gets to where it should be, it won't matter. It's too late. Honestly, can't remember who said it. I think it was somebody at Nintendo said something along the lines of, a delayed game is eventually good, but a game that comes out too soon is bad forever. So something like that. Charles, you do your thing and make me look like an idiot for forgetting that I have an editor to look this stuff up for me. Cyberpunk is an example there. And it's not just that, it took too long to get good. People just lost interest. They don't care anymore. Some do. Some do. And if you enjoy that kind of game, you should probably play it because it's probably good now. I don't know. Because I personally lost interest as well. That and I don't have time to go back to it. I already gave it the time that I could give to it. And I got a busy schedule. I'm sorry, I can't do it. There is another downside to having games be released not finished. The promise of a patch later that never comes. And what I'm going to use as an example here is actually the Master Chief Collection. It still, as of the recording of this episode, still does not have campaign crossplay. Pretty sure we were told we were going to get it and they would just add it in later. We still have it. This isn't the first time that this has happened. This isn't even the biggest example of it. It's just the one that's on my mind right now because we just played Halo 3 and we just ran into this issue. If game developers give you something and they're like, yeah, we'll just add this feature later, then add it later. Not 5 years later, not 10 years later. I paid for a full product. Give me the full product. I have expectations. I play a lot of games. I deal with a lot of developers. Please finish your shit. Now, there's another thing that I want to mention, and that is expecting modders to finish your game. I have a great example for this one, and it's called Dark Souls, specifically on PC. It sat there for however many years before the Dark Souls remaster, enhanced, whatever stupid bullshit that was. It sat there for I don't know how many years, and you know how you were able to play it on PC? DS fix. Some person, a modder, fixed the game. The developers didn't do it. This one guy fixed the game for everyone else for free. And then I guess Bandai Namco was just like, we're not going to fix it if he already fixed it. And they're like, wait a minute, why don't we just charge people $40 for DS Fix? So let's just release an enhanced edition of the game that's exactly the same, except it comes with DS Fix built into it. That's basically what happened. It's a travesty. Bandai Namco, you lazy sons of bitches. I don't know how this is an acceptable business practice, but release a half-finished product, expect the customers to finish it. That's not fair. We're not getting paid. If you're going to expect your customers to finish half the game for you, then we should get half the profits from the sales. It's only fair. Another thing that I see happening, which is not completely related, but is still somewhat related, and that's beta periods for games being extended really long. Like games that are in beta for like 3 years, or early access even. Because, well, if it's in early access, then if it's fucked up, we don't have to be accountable for that because it's in early access. They're just using early access as an excuse to not finish their game, but they've already got people's money. I feel like there need to be limits or to be held accountable in certain scenarios there. Now, a lot of developers use early access very well, very correctly, but there are some that use it as an excuse to just not finish their game or to not fix bugs or hope that the community will fix it for them, being like, oh, well, we really appreciate you giving us your feedback and your fixes for our games. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things now, and that's just, Another example, while I'm thinking about it actually, is when a game that isn't finished gets promised to be finished later, not as in fixing issues with the game, but the actual plot of a game not being done in time, and then released after the game comes out as paid DLC. Looking at you, Capcom. Asura's Wrath, or Asura's Wrath, however it's pronounced. That game, I've not played it myself, but I hear that it hinges on somewhat of a cliffhanger, and the rest of the story is paid DLC that should have just been included. I could be wrong on this part, but I think I did hear somewhere it was on the disc, and you're paying for an unlock code. Although that may have been a Marvel vs. Capcom game. Either way, both are Capcom, so it's inexcusable either way. Somebody can fact check that for me. I would appreciate it. Thank you. Just thinking of all those bad things, but it's not all bad, because in your question, you kind of answered the good part verbatim. Is it a good thing because developers can fix bugs once they see them? It makes getting updates out to fix games so much faster. Unfortunately, it also means that there are more bugs to fix, because I feel like games don't have that quality seal as much as they used to. Oddly enough, I've noticed less problems with smaller teams. Like indie games that are made by like anywhere from like 1 to 10 people tend to have less bugs and issues than these AAA titles, which I guess doesn't surprise me now that I think about it. One thing I do want to mention though, that not a lot of people realize is old games got patches too, but they were hardware patches, not software patches. They would just fix whatever was wrong, and then the next set of that game that came out of the factory to get shipped to whatever store or whatever would have a different version of the game in it. Like Ocarina of Time, for example, there's actually 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2, and there are mild differences between them. One of the big examples that is pretty well known is if you go to the Fire Temple and it has the Islamic chanting. That is removed in 1.1 and 1.2, I think. I know it's at least removed in 1.2, but it's in 1.0, and I don't think it's in any of the other versions. I know Star Fox for the Super Nintendo has a 1.0, 1.2, probably a 1.1 as well. There were a lot of games that got patches like that. Not all of them. It was not nearly as common, and you didn't really hear about it because it's not like you would buy a game and it came with patch notes, you know? That wasn't a thing. And it also wasn't really feasible for you to take your N64 cartridge to I don't know, like a Walmart or something and be like, I'd like to swap this for the new version. That wasn't really a thing that happened either. So it was harder to do, and it was much less common, but it was done. There were patches that were introduced to games, sometimes for really stupid reasons, like fixing speedrun glitches. Of all the things to fix, why? But I digress. I just think that there's a lot of potential, a lot of good that can come from the technology that we have with being able to fix games that have problems arising, because there were still bugs in older games. You just didn't hear about them because every time there was an issue with a game, you know, there wasn't an internet forum that blew up with 5,000 people posting, wham, my game didn't work exactly as intended. And then it would just get posted all over the internet, and all these big gaming news websites and stuff would take it and run with it because they don't have anything else to talk about. Bunch of fucking losers. You know, it's one of those things that's more popular now to notice or to hate on, is games having bugs. And, you know, I'm guilty of it too. If a game has a problem, I'll roast the shit out of the game, especially if I pay $60 for it and it's a AAA title. They have the money, they have the budget to make sure these games work correctly before they go out on the shelves, and when they don't, it's like, you're being lazy, quit. And when I say lazy, I don't necessarily mean the dev teams either. A lot of the times it's the publishers trying to be like, oh, you have until this day to get it out, and they don't have time to test for all the bugs. They don't have time to do a thorough sweeping for that kind of stuff. They're just like, yeah, it worked the one time we played it, go. Because they don't have time, because they're being pushed by publishers. And I think that's how we end up with bad games a lot of times, is rushed games. Whether it be because the game doesn't work correctly or the story doesn't make sense. Mass Effect 3. Yeah. It was a really good question. As odd as it is to say, though, I feel like I kind of hit everything that we needed to hit on. It's kind of weird. Normally I'm like, oh god, this is going over, or, well, that's it, like with Soup. But no, with this one, it's just like, yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say. I feel like I've coherently answered your question. I feel like I've gotten all my thoughts out, so I guess I'll wrap it up here. Thank you for your question. It was really good. I enjoyed talking about it. And remember, the submissions are open on Mondays while the stream is active. !fresh in the chat. Remember, that only works on Monday. Get your submissions in. If you already submitted and your question hasn't been picked yet, make sure you put your submission in again, so that way you have another chance to get your question answered. Thanks for watching, and do the like and whatever thing from whatever. Just do it. You know how YouTube works. And share it! I want to know if this show's going to be good enough for you guys. So if you like it, share it, because word of mouth is the best way to do this kind of stuff. But YouTube takes time and money, and if it's not worth it, then, you know, whatever. Please share my shit. I'd appreciate it. Also, if you're watching this video on release day, which should be Friday, in 2 days, Mario Week starts. We're going to be playing like 20-something different Mario games over the course of like 3 weeks. It's going to be awesome, so check that out. And if you're watching this sometime past the release day, you missed it! Catch it next year because we do it every year, so you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Thanks for watching, and just remember how we touched and went our separate ways. We'll see you next time.